system, everything set up for a tree there, and when they tried to save the other one, you know, they had the arborist opinion from the same arborist we used, Horticultural Technologies, which recommended that tree be removed, and recommended our tree be removed. And that tree, they went through extensive work, and they had to take it out in a short period of time. And
Right.
with the removal of our tree, I mean, it was rotted and decayed as well. So it is set up, I guess the point being, it is set up to accommodate a large caliper tree, and it would be a good public benefit at the Milton Public Library.
But we do have a performance standard that's of long-standing and uniform application of 3 to 1. Now, I don't know how you replace a 250-year-old oak. I mean, they're not easy to find, and they're not easy to transplant. See, and I don't mean to be facetious, but when Judith is talking about a large caliper tree, we're talking about a large.
Well, that's why
caliper
I was citing the off-site location. I don't think. I
But
mean,
that
I
doesn't
agree,
mean,
you know,
but that doesn't mean you can fill in the open space that we currently have. I mean, there are other kinds of trees and shrubbery that you could plant. It's the open space that would accommodate some trees or shrubbery, not necessarily, you know, a 250-year-old oak.
we have some opportunity for plantings.
Yeah, I was going to kind of wait till you made your way around the commission and start addressing all of the points, but, you know, the first thing that came up was the open space issue, and, you know, it's true, there will be removal of that corner where those tanks presently exist, you know, as open space now. But, you know, we're working within the regulations. There's no specified requirement that we have to provide a certain percentage of open space for this development, whether that be permitted under the local bylaw or even the state statutes that we're doing. So we certainly understand and are respectful of the commission's desire and preference that we have that open space, but the needs of the project have dictated the shape and layout of the building that we've set forth here in the application. We do have a green component to it. You know, the plans that were submitted have the landscaping. You know, Chris does have it. We want to certainly make it a residential and pedestrian-friendly atmosphere, but not to necessarily have a green park located right at the intersection. It's just not achievable here with the requirements of the project.
But that's where the pedestrians are and would congregate.
Well, that's true, but I mean, we are talking about private property here, and we don't want pedestrians to congregate on private residential property, so we're not encouraging that, so we're not going to have benches and so forth, but we'll have a green component as dictated on the planting plan, you know, for the enhancement of the project to the scale of the building for the residences that we hope to rent the spaces to. You know, so I hope the commission acknowledges that there are certain drivers of the project that need to be met, you know, that don't necessarily coincide with maintaining that open space. And in doing so, we're not violating any regulations or any directives. I know it's a mandate of the board.
It's a private project, but an awful lot of public funds are going into allowing you to do this project. And those public funds mean that people have a right to participate, to say what they would like to see. So it's not like, you know, you're totally doing this with your private money. It's a little bit different. And this is very much a public space. It always has been. And the people of Milton will always see it that way. You might like to see a long, skinny strip of trees. People don't want that. They want a little bit of an open space where people can use it a little tiny bit. And that's going to be pressure on you. I know you want to think of it as a wall around it, but it's not. People feel that space has always been open a little bit for hundreds of years, and they're still going to see it that way. That's a very public area, and it's becoming more so. There are more restaurants, there are more cafes, there are more people in that area, whether you like it or not.
I hope not to say much. I'll only interject, and in no way with any disrespect or anything contentious, but it is not public property.
I'm not suggesting
It is not, I don't see any nexus between that desire that it's always been public, it's private property. I don't see the nexus between the legitimate purposes of your bylaw, which again we're talking, I'm sorry, of the state WPA, because on this one we're talking state WPA. I think as an aside, even within your bylaw, which I've looked at, I don't see anything that would govern and justify your requirement, your stated requirement that that area, the corner, be public. It just can't be public. There's no nexus. The only way you could achieve that would be to have the town do an eminent domain taking and give them just compensation for it. So, I certainly respect your desire to, to improve the project in ways that are connected to legitimate purposes under the WPA, but that's not one of them.
Let me ask you a question, and it's a real question. It's not intended as sort of a jab back. I don't know the answer to this, but to the extent that under a 40B project, essentially you're going to bypass the municipal regulations, although the state regulations still apply. Is there any significance to the fact that our enforcement order under the town preceded the 40B application by a couple of years? Is there any first in time, first in right analysis? And I don't know the answer to this.
No, and I'll be equally candid. I don't think the timing itself is a factor, pro or con. What the meaning of, I'll simply leave it as, just as Phil in his response to a few of your questions, he didn't try to make things up, and I'm not going to try to make things up. The enforcement order and what that means under 40B, because as I understand it, it was issued under the local bylaw.
Yes.
It is theoretically waivable. I'm not suggesting that the zoning board either should or would contemplate waiving your own enforcement order. It's your enforcement order. So again, I don't have a definite answer. I think that certainly in the balancing test overall, which is the 40B standard, but also in terms of just fairness and appropriateness from your viewpoint, that there's a valid discussion as to what should happen, not just because there's an enforcement order. There was, and the action was taken without permission. There were legitimate safety reasons to do it, but I understand it was done without your permission, notwithstanding that it was for safety and protection of the public. But I do think it's fair for you to balance the reason that it was taken down, even though without your permission, into your equation, and then to balance what's appropriate for a good development, from the 40B perspective. Not that you're the 40B authority, but, to insist. Again, so far what I've heard is, and it relates to the enforcement order, is that, this has always been public, it's always been open, and we want to keep it that way, but that really doesn't have anything to do with the fact that a tree was cut down. If there's other environmental amenities, such as, and even somewhat larger caliber perhaps than what we already proposed along the strip, that to me is part of the give and take and would be valid, but not an insistence that corner, which just doesn't work for our building, be left as open. So it's not a public park, and we're not going to invite the public there.
Let me just correct something that I said, because I answered quickly. You asked whether or not we issued our enforcement order under the town bylaw, and I said yes. We also issued it under the Wetlands Protection Act. It's both.
Yes,
No,
and
that may or may not
I didn't
make a
mean to
difference.
ignore that, but, as to under the WPA, obviously, whatever DEP regs and enforcement, that's a separate story, because we all know certainly 40B doesn't affect that.
Understanding the conversation that's been talked about in terms of public space, public access, the openness of the corner, there's an argument that I kind of adhere to, which is the improvement of the site. And the removal of the tree and the openness of the corner were two existing conditions. And the proposal is not an improvement of the site. And going back to that, what we're asking for is consideration in improvement of the site. Not from my perspective, not in making it a public space, but in making it an improvement to the neighborhood relative to what has been removed or what is being proposed to be removed. And what we're seeing right now, I would argue, is not an improvement of the site from what it was before.
Well, that at least distinguishes and separates an objective of the commission from the public use aspect,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. So I can certainly respond to that and deal with that, and that's a legitimate discussion, in my opinion. I don't have any quick
It's gonna
response.
develop.
Yeah, it's going to, other than the fact that when you say improvement, yes, as to that corner, if you like it as open space, that corner, and we're not going to have that, then on that limited item, I guess you could say it's not an improvement. But when you look at the overall site, and I'll leave it to the engineers, but when you look at the overall site, including getting rid of the building, and should there be any contamination, getting rid of the contamination and improvement of the stormwater management and all of that, I think certainly there's an overall improvement of the site. So again, you look at the parcel as a whole, as we do in land use, as opposed to the components, meaning just the corner. Overall, I think that there's an improvement.
Right. And the act goes on, they define improvement really as it relates to the stormwater standards more than, aesthetics. So again, we have to keep those issues separate. So we have to focus on improvements under the stormwater standards, which relates to DEP's comments and Horsley Witten's letter. But then as Peter mentioned, the overall site improvement, the old abandoned factory that's collapsing on itself comes down and a new building goes up in its place. The greenscape goes in around it, and, we feel that is an improvement to the area. Maybe you do lose the open space on the corner, that's not in dispute, but I think the other benefits can outweigh that.
Judith, I had a question. You had mentioned public money for that site. What public money?
In terms of financing, guarantees, we were talking about that before. That in fact, when you're doing a 40B, this consideration, you're going to the state, you're looking for guarantees on loans, those sort of things. So you're not working in a vacuum here. That's what I mean, Mr. Conley. You're not working in a vacuum. You're working with other people around the state with public money that supports and encourages certain types of development. So in that sense, public values come into play. If this was exclusively, somebody's private property and completely, they have money in the bank and there's no further public involvement, I think that's a different situation. Here, when you're talking about a 40B project, there's additional scrutiny that you have to expect. And when I say public, I'm not meaning in the sense of in fee simple, that this is my project that's private as opposed to public. I mean more of a sense of areas that people looking at something, because it's going to be looked at all the time, so they feel a sense of ownership, even if they're not actually walking on the property. But they feel a sense of ownership because it's right there in an area that's heavily used. So I'm using the term somewhat loosely, but I still think it's an important consideration. And I can't overstress how much people in Milton feel this site should be improved upon, and that it's going to be used more and more to some extent. That whole area is being used much more.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Just real quickly, not to draw it out, but, and I respect that, but just so everybody has the correct information, there are no public subsidy funds from grants from the federal government or the Commonwealth. The financing, as is required for 40B, is from a quasi-public, but really private, quasi-public private entity that is not an arm of the government of Massachusetts. It is the Massachusetts Housing Partnership Fund as the entity that will make a loan on the project. So there are no other public funds. And the only other thing I would say is that, again, respecting that point, but when you talk about a public purpose and attributes, the main public purpose and benefit here is the creation of affordable housing. Now, I fully respect that that's not technically the Conservation Commission's concern, but when you do mention public benefit, then I think it's fair for me to respond that the main public benefit for development like this is the creation of affordable housing. And if we could create more open space, we'd love to accommodate everybody, but it just doesn't work with the number of units that are required and the way it works. And my final point is simply, and please don't take this the wrong way, you're speaking on behalf of the citizens of Milton. I don't recall at the 3 zoning board hearings we've had, any of the neighbors, be they residential or business owners, standing up there and saying, we want this corner to remain as open. It's public hearing, public commentary at every hearing, as you know, and I don't recall any of the multiple speakers who had some praise and some legitimate concerns and questions that have been addressed with the zoning board. I don't recall anybody saying that that should remain an open corner. Thank you.
Me again? Yeah, to do the site work and do demolition, aren't we required to shut down the MBTA trolley?
That'll be coordinated with the town's demolition contractor and we'll have to visit that with the MBTA. There'll be another meeting to coordinate shutdowns and,
Who's gonna pay for the diversion costs?
well, again, that,
Which project are you talking about?
It's either gonna, they have to work next to the MBTA trolley tracks
No, I just didn't want to be confused.
to take
It's
down
on
the
the-
building.
The demo or?
he's asking about the
And the
MBTA
sidewalk.
fees,
They're
No, no, I
working-
understand that, but at what time? During the demolition or during the construction?
demolition.
During demolition.
Demolition.
Is what he's asking, I believe.
Well, I don't know when you're gonna take it down, because
Well,
I don't know
what-
when the brush is moving in.
When the demolition plan is coordinated with the town's portion, and it'll be determined the safest way to take that structure down. And at that time, it'll be determined who will be paying for the diversion costs, because there are property lines there. We're not sure how that coordination is gonna be yet, so. Both parties are responsible for diversion shutdowns. If theirs comes down first, they'll have to shut theirs. If we're ready to take ours in, maybe we can get some of it down, maybe we'll have to pay for an extra day, maybe vice versa, I don't know. That hasn't been hashed out yet because the town doesn't have a demolition contractor yet. So I can't speak to that specifically, Craig. There is gonna be a diversion, there is gonna be a shutdown, I don't know how many days it'll be. I don't know if it could be coordinated properly, that maybe we get maybe a 1 day and take the whole thing in, I'm not sure. So that'll have to be this.
So
worked
there'll
out.
possibly be public money from the town of Milton going for your project.
No,
Well, who's gonna pay
No.
for the,
no.
who's gonna pay for the diversion?
Like I said, the town is responsible for their diversion and for the demolition of their project.
Right.
And then what happens is with diversions, and we've talked about this at the last meeting, I went around in circles with you. What it is, and as a private owner, if I can piggyback in on a diversion, and I can get my site ready and take that structure in while the town's doing their work, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I have every right to do it, and I don't see any reason why you'd have a problem with that. None. And if that time, if I can't get that building in on time and I need an extra day, I'll pay for the extra day, whatever way that works.
But what happens if the town decides not to take it down right now? You wanna go ahead with your project, you will have to absorb
The town's gonna be taking their building down, Craig.
their building down.
They're gonna be taking their building down.
And if they can do it without a diversion cost,
If they can do it without the diversion cost, then hopefully we can do it without a diversion cost. And if not, then we'll have to pay for the diversion. That's how that is. That'll be hashed out.
Is there any diversion associated with the building? The building project? The construction of the building as it goes up?
I haven't gotten that far.
All right. Right.
I'm not, we're gonna be in off that retaining wall. I think we'll be in enough that we would, maybe flag people. I don't think there'd be a diversion. Maybe, I don't wanna say, I haven't studied that.
Okay.
how do you anticipate your site work contractor going on with the DCR's site work contract at the same location?
DCR, I'm not sure of their start date, Craig. We may be, if they started, I don't know when they're gonna start that bike path stuff, I'm not sure.
As far as I know, they've already accepted bids.
I don't know, maybe the town, maybe the town planner might have a better answer to that.
I even talked to them lately. I know the bids came in a little high, and they were rebidding it, but
Okay, I'm not sure.
All right, so we've got open space as an issue, tree replacement related to that. We've got stormwater capacity, and particularly to accommodate the surge, storm surges. And part of that may be a separate issue, but it may be part of the stormwater. You've got a lot of cars in there. And I think that the plans actually do include some kind of an oil separator in the basement, but you've got, what, 65 cars underground?
Right.
So we just need to be really comfortable that whatever petroleum runoff is coming into the floor drain is going somewhere where we know it's going.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So
so-
there'll be an oil and gas separator component, factored into the plans. It's already on there now. And that'll be sized to meet the plumbing code because it's all interior space.
Okay.
From my perspective, it's a scalable issue.
Hmm.
So whatever, assuming that the system they're proposing is viable, it's a matter of scale.
So if I could, just to touch upon Mike's original comment, just going the list that you just had about stormwater capacity, you said that you felt the system was undersized for what it has to handle. I think you'd have to accept that roof runoff under the Wetlands Protection Act does not need to be treated. So really, the issue there is how we route that to the design point, and that goes back to the coordination with DPW in terms of how we get it into the municipal system. So we're dealing with that, and
There's a
then,
retention capacity there as well, right?
Well-
It's not a full surcharge into the system.
well, and that's part of the conversation that we're having with Joe Lynch and John Thompson, is, we're factoring into the design that the entirety of the building is going into the municipal system, and we're gonna sort out the capacity issues as we scope those lines referenced at the last hearing. In recent discovery, because of the way the existing building is broken up, there's actually points of discharge that head directly towards the MBTA tracks on the Neponset River from roof runoff. There's another portion that heads out to Elliott Street, and then the third portion actually goes underground and into the Central Ave system. So we actually have some different points of discharge that we can go to minimize, I think, that surge that you're probably alluding to. That's all going to be shaken out with DPW. Their comment with ZBA 2 weeks ago was that our assumption of it all going into the system didn't hold merit, and we went on record to say, we're not able to trace all of the existing lines of the building because it's so old, because it's collapsed, because we can't go inside it, because we can't dye test or smoke test everything, because all the lines have been broken and some of the roof leaders coming down off of the top higher portions of the building. So we met with them to say, how do we do this, guys? Let's work collectively to solve this. And the first thing that we came to conclusion on is let's scope the lines, let's camera the lines, figure out where everything goes. We'll do an analysis on what capacity exists, and whatever is in there, they'll give to us for the support of the building, and whatever that differential is, obviously then we have to engineer something.
I don't think you can modify I don't think you can design to the maximum capacity that's available. I think you're gonna need to provide some retention capacity in order to, sure, they're gonna give you some capacity in the system, but when they figure out what the capacity is, that's not a line that you can go to. And that you're gonna need to design in some kind of retention capacity so that there is additional capacity in the system for other things that are coming up. We can't max out the design of the capacity of the system.
And I would agree with that as well. I mean, there needs to be some allowances in there, you never design for the full capacity of a pipe, so we'll sort that out with them. I think the conclusion that we reached today with them, which was a very important point, is that the building that exists there now, is larger in terms of square footage than what we're proposing. And even though the roof is collapsed and we don't really know where all the water's going, but all the water that's falling from the sky is landing in that building, and it's not resulting in a negative action out on Elliott or Central Ave, whether it be on the surface street or in the closed drainage system. And that's a very positive thing. It means that wherever it's going, there's capacity there to handle that roof runoff. And we're gonna recalculate that and take advantage of it. And
Figure out how it all works. You're not there yet.
how to refine it even better than we've already done. And, DPW is on board, and that also led to the letter today about stormwater management permit. So we'll get there.
You have anything else?
I just add that I think the tree situation can be mitigated on a 3-to-1 ratio, and we can work out the calculus on that. I'm a split mind on the open space issue, to be honest with you, relative to the responsibility of other boards in the town, the definition of what a little bit of space means. My experience in that area of town is not reflected by what I'm hearing from some other people based upon having grown up and hung around down there. So I'm of a divided mind on the open space issue. I'd like to see this not necessarily be a dichotomy of what can't be done and what can be done, but rather is there some middle ground?
Wouldn't it be great, though, if the developer had the whole plot of land, the rectangular one, including the building?
In the back?
Right.
I don't know, because that's very valuable property, and I think the town has a responsibility to maximize tax revenue from that property for the benefit of the community as a whole, and I don't know if the expansion of this project would serve that purpose.
Well, I didn't mean to expand it as in more dense units. I meant to accommodate open space.
But then we lose future possibilities for revenue generation to the tax base.
Well, I guess that goes to the negotiating abilities of
Sure does.
Conley in the town. All right. Now, do you need more from us? I mean, we've identified some of our concerns. We've tried to keep it within the confines of what we can do and what we can't do in a 40B project. But you've got the stormwater concerns, you discharge into the river. We've already talked about the contamination issues. We don't have to repeat those.
I think those are our two big hot topics is, the contamination issues, which, are part of this discussion, and really stormwater, which, the initial pass on it was addressed with Horsley Witten, and now the refinement will occur under the stormwater management permit process with DPW. And I think if we can meet the intent of that SMP with DPW, I think inherently it'll satisfy the commission.
All right. Anything else, other abutters here or members of the public that would like to question or comment? Do we have your assent to continue this hearing? Yes. Until December 9th? Anything else?
Nothing further.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I know you folks have been waiting a long time, so God bless you for your patience.
No bathroom break for you.
Notice of intent, 693 through 711 Randolph Avenue is the next item on the agenda.
John, I do need to recuse myself.
Oh, you do, okay.
Is it because you got stung by the bee so many times?
I know. PTSD.
That is true.
Habitat, I tell you.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, that was. That was one of several.
I guess so, it's not really Christmas, huh?
He's not getting in your box, so forget it.
All right, good evening. Thank you for coming. Can you identify yourself for our recorder, please?
Good evening. My name is Liz Sweet. I'm the 40B consultant with LDS Consulting Group.
Alan Caggiano, the attorney from Mintz-Levin.
Paul Holland, the developer with the Holland Companies.
Scott Morrison from Ecotech, the wetland scientist.
Rebecca Bashan, the landscape architect, UBLA.
Rebecca, can you give me your last name again?
Bashan, B-A-C-H-A-N-D.
Thank you very much.
And Jim Burke with the Sell Burke and Associates, B-U-R-K-E.
All right, thank you.
I'm Marilyn Newman, environmental attorney for the project.
Oh, thank you. Well, welcome all. What can you tell us?
Oh, if it pleases you, I'd also like to submit our receipts from the certified letters. Since we have introduced our team and we are going to be having our full 40B hearing on December 2nd, we really weren't planning on going into a lot of the project specifics since we're, it's getting late in time. So I think we're just going to turn it right over to our two engineers, Scott and Jim, to go through the pertinent information for your review.
I'm sorry, you're saying December 2nd is what? What is that hearing?
It's the first ZBA hearing. It's the first public hearing. So we'll be going through the project from start to finish. If you want us to give you project details, I'm very happy to provide that as well. A general overview of the project. Would you like to hear that?
Well, I think it's worthwhile since there are so many people here who are interested in hearing about the project. I think we should do it.
So the very, big picture is that we're about 7.81 acres. We're proposing 90 rental units in 2 buildings. 23 of those units are going to be affordable for households at 80% of area median income. we will be proposing 83 under-building parking spaces and 73 surface parking spaces. So that's really kind of the very, very high level, but I think our engineers can, again, walk you through where the buildings are going to be located and what matters pertain to specifically to the state regulations as well as the local conditions.
What I'll do is Sean Morrison from Ecotech again. I'll just go through kind of the existing condition, turn it over to Jim.
If there's some way that the public could also see that, I mean, we
Would it
like
help
that
if I
here.
sit on this side? Use the, we can use.
What is your preference?
There's no easy behind you, they take the mic,
How's this?
they need the mic.
Oh, you need a mic? Yeah.
You might be able to pinch it.
Use the pinch, yeah.
Can people see that?
Just to get everybody oriented, this is Randolph Ave here. 7-Eleven, I believe, is this house here. Existing site conditions generally slope, this is north, generally slope from west to east. This is kind of the high area here, shedding down this way. Wetland resource areas on the site consist of bordering vegetative wetland, which is located here along the frontage. There's also additional bordering vegetative wetland in the rear of the property here. And there's 2 isolated wetlands, local jurisdiction. They're too small to be isolated land subject to flooding. There's no estimated or priority habitat located on the site. There's no perennial streams located on the site. We've also evaluated the wetlands, and we've found no vernal pools on the property. And again, it generally sheds, the drainage essentially comes down this way, and this wetland ultimately sheets to the south before ultimately going through a culvert underneath Randolph Ave. I think at this point I can turn it over to Jim. He can go through the project, the proposed project and stormwater, and then after that I can kind of take over and do the wetland impacts and mitigation we've got proposed.
Thanks, Scott. Again, Jim Burke with Selberg Associates, civil engineer, registered in Falmouth, Massachusetts. What we're looking at is, as Lynn said, about just under 8 acres being accessed by a 24-foot road off of Randolph Ave. It's got a 4-foot wide sidewalk as well. The road probably extends up to a parking lot once it gets across the wetlands. About, need the mic? Yes.
So yeah, you have a roadway that extends about 300 feet from Randolph Ave to open up into a parking lot that I think it has like about 73 surface spaces, and we have 83 spaces underneath the buildings. One building is located within the 100-foot buffer. The other building is not. The one that is, it's about 23,000 square feet, if memory serves correct. That's the 90-unit building. I'm sorry, yeah, 60, I'm sorry, 90 total. And also in that roadway is a 10-foot open bottom culvert that allows the hydraulic connectivity between the 2 sides of the wetlands to continue to exist. Along with that stormwater condition, we're also providing stormwater controls for the parking lot and for the roof runoff. We have about 5, not about, exactly 5 underground detention basins that I can show you. They're demarcated with the yellow boxes. They're 30-inch diameter hand core pipes, which is a manufacturer of HDPE pipe. It's a significant amount of storage underneath the ground, and we release that in a controlled fashion into outlet control structures, which basically eventually funnel down and empty out into the wetlands on the up gradient side of the culvert. From
that standpoint, to protect the wetlands that we're draining into, we're also providing erosion control for the entire site, and will be controlled construction during the whole thing. We realize that getting across that wetland area is going to be a sensitive item. We're going to be doing that immediately, and then as soon as we get across that wetland, we'll be putting in the replication areas, which Scott will discuss later on. Once we get the roadway constructed, then we'll be bringing the utilities across and building the road up and constructing the culvert. All of this will be done, within the conditions issued by the commission, hopefully, and with the proper erosion control and sedimentation control and dewatering if necessary and the like.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I don't mean to interrupt, I should have asked this before, but the project is for 90 units.
Correct.
And I know there have been revisions, but the letter from May 27th, it says 72 units.
And there could be a typo, because it was 72.
If you're referring to the original site eligibility letter that was issued by Mass Housing was for a 72-unit project. We heard back from the municipality and in conversations with the the planning director for the town, that there was a very strong desire to have less 3-bedroom units on the site. And that we also had some comments that there was concern about a reserved area on the site. So we took the time.
What's a reserved area? What do you mean?
There is an area on the site that I apologize, has a deed restriction on it.
Can you indicate on where that is?
It's, to be honest, it's not relevant to the answer that I'm trying to give to you. So let me finish that, and let me just finish giving you the answer to the question that was asked. At the end of the day, between when we filed our original site eligibility and we filed with the ZBA, based on the comments and the feedback that we got from the town, we revised the plan to go from 3 buildings to 2 buildings, to consolidate the site considerably, and to get rid of a lot of the 3-bedroom units, and we now only have 10% 3-bedroom units. So in turn, we have more units on the property, and in actuality, less bedrooms and less coverage. We did go back to the subsidizing agency, Mass Housing. We showed them our information, and there is a supplemental letter in the ZBA submission saying that Mass Housing sits on its original findings, that that the site eligibility letter stands as issued, but for the number of units.
So the number of bedrooms has decreased?
The number of bedrooms actually decreased overall, because originally I think there were something like 33 3-bedrooms, and now we have 9.
So fewer.
Many more 1 and 2 bedrooms, and considerably less 3-bedrooms. So if it was the site eligibility letter that you were asking about, there is a new letter that was issued from Mass Housing, and it is part of the ZBA submission.
Yeah, I was at your tab 13, which is the May 27th, 2014. It did reference.
That was the original one, yeah.
Did reference to 72. Jim, getting back to you, I should let you give you a spiel, but when I looked at the plan, I looked at the replication area for the alterations in the wetlands, and then I looked for the snow removal.
Yep, it was on the layout plan.
Looks like you're dumping the snow in the replicated wetlands.
Well, from a standpoint of if that's not preferred, then we certainly can avoid that and find another location for it.
Wow.
Like I say, but it's still, it's hydraulic. It's water.
I wasn't crazy when I saw that, right?
Okay.
Okay.
But, we want to keep it kind of central to the site.
You know, obviously, if we have to truck
The
it
making
off-site, you know,
stone in? Okay.
John, you know the answers. You know, if we can't put it there, then and we don't have any more room on site, then we'll just have an agreement to truck it off-site and dispose of it in a legal manner. We try to consolidate the area as best we could, and keep the core of it central, and not kind of spread it out across the 8 acres. But I hear what you're saying, and we certainly can correct that.
All right. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but
Yep.
we'd also want some limitation on the use of chemical melt.
Sure. Don't forget the fertilizer and,
Well, no, when I saw it, I mean, the replication area, and then on another diagram, it shows it's the same place.
Yeah.
That might not work.
All right, fair enough.
Can I ask you another question? You've got a culvert coming in, and I know we had, some discussions, a lot of discussions, about the delineations of the wetlands. But to the extent that you're at 4,800, just under the 5,000, you've got a limited project. I understand that. But in the limited project, when you're cutting across the wetlands, have you considered as an alternatives analysis using a bridge? Because the culvert is going to inhibit the wildlife going back and forth.
Well, actually,
Bridge would not.
that's exactly why we used a 10-foot wide one. The 10-foot wide culvert isn't necessary for the hydraulics. The hydraulics flowing through there, there is no flood storage. The watershed on top of that is basically just the DPW yard. And so for the amount of water that flows through there isn't significant. So what is significant is providing the area, 10 feet wide culvert for the wildlife, and that's exactly why I chose it. As far as a bridge goes, and it's a considerable expense it's a span of, I want to say 150 feet or so. The road's 24 feet wide, the sidewalk's 4 feet. We have a 3-foot wide retaining wall, and I used that specific for the possibility, instead of using ported place where it could end up being thinner, for kind of a precast block that you could stack and construct quickly and get out of there quickly without any sort of poured concrete issues with regards to the wetlands.
Do you know what the span is on Stonebridge Lane?
I don't.
Anybody?
It's certainly less than 100 feet.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely is, right?
I'd say it's maybe.
But it's a whole lot bigger than 10.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Because that, if you were on the commission, that was a big issue as to how to get the wildlife through, and that was a sensitive area right off of Woodland Road.
But yeah, I think, that's why we chose the 10. And 10 is a significant space. I mean, it's almost 10 feet, so.
All right, I didn't mean to distract you, so.
Okay. I'm almost done. So, I guess, from my standpoint, the remaining issues that I want to talk about is that roadway, that span that we fill for the wetlands. You're right, it's just 4,800 square feet, but, the temporary alterations brings it down to 42. I forget the replication areas that we're providing is just under 7,000 square feet, so we're exceeding the 1-for-1. And the only other item I have is that the stormwater management system that we provide, it meets all the 1 through 10 requirements in the stormwater checklist, from the peak flow and to no untreated discharges. We provide a long-term pollution prevention plan. We provide the operation and maintenance manual. We do the recharge, and we do everything that the stormwater management requirements require us to do. And at that, I would open it up to Scott to discuss the replication area.
Well, he's doing that, if it would please the chairman, I'm happy to submit the letter for the reaffirmation of the site eligibility.
Oh, I mean, with the change?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that, actually.
Okay, well, just, there you go.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a point of clarification at this time? The chair entertain a question on behalf of an abutter.
Could you address who you are?
Introduce yourself.
With
Yes,
your
you may.
permission.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. My name is John Whitten. I'm an attorney. I'm here representing Mr. Lombardi, who's an abutter on Highland Ave. And I'd like to present to the board when the board opens it to the public. But a question for the engineer. You've stated that the roadway is 24 feet plus a 4-foot sidewalk. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the plans show 24 foot of a layout plus a 4-foot sidewalk?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
So this is a blow-up of the wetland crossing. We've got that box here. This is the proposed wetland fill. We've got 4,344 square feet of fill, another 510 square feet of temporary disturbance to construct that, which gives you a grand total of 4,854 square feet of direct wetland impact. Because the project is accessing developable upland, we could have claimed the limited project provision. However, we meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act. We don't need to claim the limited project status. The project's below the 5,000 square feet. We're providing replication as close as we can do it to the impact area. We've provided a detailed replication protocol. Essentially what's proposed is this area here. We'll remove this soil, construct the crossing, stockpile that soil on site. Once we get that crossing in, we'll be able to go access these areas, do the excavation work necessary to build these replication areas here and here. Requires some removal of material, obviously. And then that stockpiled material from this impact area will be used as kind of a seed bed and soil mix for these replication areas. If additional soil is needed, we don't expect that, but we can use on-site topsoil mixed with a leaf mold compost. There's a detail in the wetland replication detail in that that describes the whole technique of doing that and the detailed plantings. We showed here we've got 10 red maples planted and 100 shrubs that we're proposing within these replication areas with a mix of vegetation that's found on the site. So that will be overseen by a wetland scientist. And then inspections, as the commissions presumably would require, inspections over the years provide a report to demonstrate the success of that. If there's damaged trees that don't overwinter well, we'll certainly replace those, but we're providing the oversight of those replication areas.
In the plan, I actually saw a lot of the response action plans for the construction phase, but I didn't see as much for ongoing obligation for a lot of the drainage facilities. And what I kept reading over and over was that during construction phase. But you do contemplate that there'll be an ongoing obligation to maintain these structures and make sure that the wetlands are protected.
There's an operation maintenance plan in there, and for the catch basins, drain manholes, the hand-core structures.
All right, so I've got a lot of tags here that seem to, there are certain places that you're limiting it to construction phase. But as long as that's replicated into the future.
Yep. There'll be that for the replication areas, got ongoing oversight to make sure it's successful, and the stormwater's got an operations and maintenance plan. So that will continue in perpetuity.
Just while you're talking about the wetlands, what was the final about the stream that runs behind the houses here? Remember there was people testifying
There's
before?
huge flooding. You could have a boat in the backyard.
Yeah, that there was a stream. Was it perennial?
Yeah,
Is it intermittent?
Yeah, we ran stream stats. I thought we had gone through that through the NRAD process. We've ran stream stats and demonstrated that you've got a watershed that's too small for it to be a perennial stream. You need a watershed of at least 1 square mile for that to happen, or 1 square mile and 75% stratified drift, which you don't have either. The other thing is you don't have a well-defined channel through there. I think there is Obviously, from speaking with the abutters, it's a wetland, it periodically floods, but there is no perennial stream.
This, according to DEP, not the Milton bylaw.
DEP was the issuing authority for and then there's really no, under the bylaw and regulations essentially, in most cases, there's some, I'll go over the differences, but in most cases, they refer back to definitions in the Wetlands Protection Act. And as we're talking about the bylaw, we understand this is a 40B project, so this meeting here, we're discussing, it's filed under the Wetlands Protection Act. The bylaw section will be administered by the local ZBA, who will issue the permit under the local bylaw. In consideration of that, we also have looked at the standards under the bylaw and regulations. One of the big things in the bylaw is the 25-foot no-touch zone. We've attempted, with the exception of this crossing, we've attempted to stay outside of that. We do have some impacts into that at about 580 square feet. There's a couple impacts which aren't shown on here. If you would accept that, the access road. There's additional impacts, obviously, for the access road. And then under the bylaw regulations, you've got, there's some additional erosion silt prevention requirements. Again, as we've full stormwater compliance, we've got all kinds of erosion control barriers for construction, detailed, construction sequencing. So we're addressing that, even though it's, ZBA will actually ultimately issue that permit. And then the other thing is, catch basins, oil separators. That's been included in the project design. That's also in the local regulations. So we're attempting to, even though it's somewhat outside of the commission's purview here in this forum, we're still trying to comply and meet with the bylaw standards.
Are you filling any of the floodplain?
There is no floodplain out there. There's no bordering land subject to flooding. That said, I think everybody understands that the wetlands, the bordering vegetative wetland itself does flood. We're providing wetland replication at the similar and same elevations. So where this would flood today, upon completion, these replication areas are actually larger in size, so you have additional area where that could flood. Also, where we've got this 10-foot wide box culvert here, we're trying to maintain the hydrology of the area. So there's an unrestrained, unrestricted flow, essentially both ways. So there's no bordering land subject to flooding, but we're addressing those through bordering vegetative wetland mitigation.
Now, was this project before my time on the board? Okay. Did the DEP come in and make a determination as to where the wetlands were?
Yes.
Yes.
Has your partner been seen since then?
No, it's just, and just so everybody's aware, there was one question essentially at the crossing. I think everybody.
I'm new here.
I think everybody agreed elsewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was just a question of right at that crossing. We had a disagreement. DEP came and evaluated it and made a determination.
So it was
You are correct, sir.
just that one spot? DEP
Well,
agreed with
what it did is, we didn't know. We're out in the middle of the wilderness, and it just so happened that it came in at like 5,400 square feet, where we set the line with Scott's partner. And then lo and behold, there was they contested it, they tried to bring it back. We said no, and DEP said yes. And lo and behold, it went from 5,400 to 4,800.
Well, that's
Who'd have thunk?
Let me add a few of these things. That sidewalk, that when you guys changed the flags, I was not present at.
You are correct.
And
Which partner
the-
was?
Enough said.
Okay.
You also, based on that review, and my not being there, we hired a peer review at our expense, and you hired him. And he agreed with our line. And at that point, you continued to change the line, and then that's when we appealed it.
With your partner and Scott's partner.
Right, but Mr.
Both of them were
Rockwood,
there.
Mr. Rockwood also came in as part of that. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4 wetland scientists review this line, and this is what we have.
You are correct.
So
You are correct.
I'd say it's the most accurate line in Milton.
And for the public's knowledge, we spent a lot of time on this site going over where the wetland line was. And DEP did rule, and they ruled in your favor. I acknowledge that.
I think they ruled in our favor.
I said your favor. Oh,
It's the correct line.
I get you. All right. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think I was pretty much wrapping it up. I think if the commission's got additional questions, Jim and I, your project team, would be happy to answer.
In terms of the driveway access, non-bridge, what are you calling it? A driveway? I mean, what is can you describe the construction of that?
The construction of this?
No, the
Or the-
whole thing. And you just mentioned that the hydrology was gonna work. Are you thinking the hydrology is working across that purely through the 10-foot culvert? Or is the assembly made out of stone and allows the
No,
hydrology to
it's a
work?
precast open bottom culvert.
No. Is the entire length of the drive permeable to water, or is it only the culvert that's permeable?
Only the culvert.
So did you look at using precast and piers? Split it into three spans and use precast elements, and then the whole thing could be opened? And it'd probably be quicker to build, and I would be surprised if it wasn't cheaper.
I have not.
Certainly look into that.
Yeah, because then you'd build 2 piers in the middle, and then you'd come in with precast planks, and basically drop them into place, and the whole bottom would be pretty much wide open.
We still have to get utilities up there. And there's a dip in the road where we need to capture stormwater.
Yep.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's of interest to us, because
Sure.
there's a lot of water and there's a lot of wildlife.
A lot of water.
A lot of wildlife there, not just bees.
Wasps.
But we're making that joke because one of our other commissioners got bitten by bees about 12 times on the last sidewalk.
This
It wasn't
Yeah.
pleasant.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
Must not have been our winter one in the 5 feet of snow.
There's a lot of habitat here. I wanted to address great horned owls, saw-whet owls, and screech owls, all are living on this site. People see them. They're mostly in white pines. So how are you protecting the white pines? Are you making sure they're being preserved in some way?
They don't have to address it.
Yeah, it's a state.
Yeah, yeah.
There will be some,
And these are pretty tall trees. They're probably at least 150 years old.
yeah, there will be some, trees remaining this area here. So it's, obviously we've got to do some development. Development's been clustered, but there will be some,
So you
Some
can tell us how many
trees
trees
and
you're
open
taking down and what caliber?
I couldn't go in and, list every
At some
single
point.
one, but
Okay, but at some point.
So are you asking for a tree survey?
Well, considering the habitat value here, it's significant.
Of a particular size tree? I
Definitely.
mean, it's pretty dense, so I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't survey every tree.
No, there's a lot.
But is it over-
Of a certain size.
Everything over 5 inches or everything?
No,
over-
I think significant size tree.
yeah.
Not really. I wouldn't agree.
But at
No,
5
I think
inches,
there's a lot,
yeah.
yeah.
5 inches is too small.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
But a tree of, say, 8-inch caliber, and then it would get into the white pines, and certainly,
You're the tree person.
well, we all are. But I think we need that, because there've been reports here, particularly nesting sites, and I'm sure the public could speak to that as well.
I mean, given the expanse of that request, I mean, it's significant. I'd like to talk to my client about it, and also, at the same time, can we keep it within the 100-foot buffer? I mean, that's the jurisdiction of the commission.
I think you are correct.
I have other questions beyond the wetlands, or comments. Right now, you're showing that, what is the name of the system, the water retention system that you use?
Oh, it's just the hand
Hand
core.
core?
It's a 30-inch diameter
Chamber.
HDPE pipe.
Right.
But I thought you had chambers.
It functions as a chamber.
Functioning chamber. It's a,
Okay.
yeah, it's, I used them, actually, you guys didn't get to see that. That was a Brush Hill Road job. But basically, it's just a round chamber.
So you collect the water and then you let it drain back into the ground?
They'll be perforated and they'll recharge to what the soils will allow. Then the end of the structure is going to access a drain manhole, and it'll be capped, and then they'll have an orifice in that cap, and with a 12-inch pipe leading out of that. So that structure will operate with an orifice control.
So what is the name of the system again?
Hand core, HANCOR.
The detail of the hand core right now shows that the outflow is below the inflow, which means that we don't have any retention capacity in it. So if you could look at it and.
The outflow is,
As I read the detail,
It-
there is no
so-
retention capacity in the system. If we elevate the outflow,
But-
then you effectively get retention in the system.
Are you talking detention or retention? Because we're doing detention. We're going to detain the flow to buffer the peak.
Right, but retention is, you're basically
We have-
gonna slow it down, you're
Right.
gonna.
But what you have here in the pipe is a large inlet. You have a 12-inch in, and you have a very tiny outlet out.
Oh, I didn't catch that. So you're restricting the flow on the outflow?
Correct.
Okay. The bigger issue for me is that you're building right up to the you're right up to the 25-foot setback, and you've got a 15-foot retaining wall from grade to the parking level. I don't believe that you can build what you've drawn without impacting the wetland. Both in terms of the foundation that you're going to have to build in order to support that retaining wall, as well as providing adequate clearance for construction around the perimeter of the building.
You know, as it happens, I've had a lot of experience recently of building retaining walls exceeding that height.
Yeah.
And
With zero clearance?
with zero clearance, in the sense that you excavate down to bearing soil, bring in a stone bed, place the stone level, obviously. When I say the stone, it's a precast, what is it, I forget the name of it.
Ready Rock.
Durastrong or something like that, strong.
Dense pack.
But it's a precast block it's fairly massive.
Sure.
And you just stack them like Legos. And with the geotech style fabric.
You're gonna need to provide us, I didn't see a detail on the set
Okay.
for that. So you're
Sure.
gonna need to, because right now, as I look at this right now, I wouldn't say that what you're drawing is buildable.
Yeah, and
Relative.
note the width of the wall, it's 3 feet 8 inches.
Sure.
And that's the spec for the block, but I'll get you the spec for the
Okay.
block.
Part of that is also providing adequate access around the back of the building so that you can build the building. So you've given yourself no access on the whole back side of the building because you're trying to build right up to the setback.
You know, which side of the building we talking?
I'm talking about the whole back side of the building here.
Well, like I say, I think from a standpoint of how this is gonna be built, we're gonna be coming in, and
first thing we're gonna be doing is building the replication areas. And in these areas here, we're gonna be, you know, this is gonna give us the room to get around to the building, to build it.
What?
So, I mean, we're working, the erosion control barrier is here. So, I mean, here, I mean, that's, I mean, what are we at, a 40 scale? I mean, that's 50 feet. I mean, so to me, you have the room to build the building, and to get around the building.
Well, that's not 50 feet.
No,
But even at that, you're,
you're touching. Right there, right there,
yeah,
and right here.
you've taken it down to 0.
Taking it.
No, right, and like I said, you know, when we were talking about the 25-foot buffer, we're keeping the building out of there for the 25-foot buffer. We'll we'll have to get in here to build the buffer, yeah.
This is like Zero Brook Road, you know, right up against the 25 foot, exactly. No space at all. What?
Which one?
Zero Brook Road.
Zero Brook Road.
Oh, Zero Brook Road?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
We do, Jim.
Where are you staging all of your equipment? And start with the road, if you would, first.
You want to have the big drawing up there so everyone can see it?
Well, we have control of the two houses on either side of the roadway. So there'll be staging in those locations. And then as we...
Are you going to knock the houses down?
No.
No.
But you purchased both of those houses to use the property?
This is part of the property.
I mean, yeah, on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they will be using that area.
You're saying yes, Jim?
Temporarily for staging.
Well, you rented it?
Is that a yes or a no? Do you own both houses?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes,
No,
we do.
sorry. All right. So where are you, that's a lot of construction equipment, and where are you?
Well, you know, the road itself, you're going to end up with a temporary road first, and probably a temporary hydraulic connection to